Nancy, just after noon on Wall Street time, Mark Gurman reported that the smart ring maker Aura has filed confidentially for an IPO. Comes after SpaceX dropped the big one yesterday. We also learned that OpenAI is preparing to file for an IPO in the coming weeks. This flurry of capital markets activity, what is it telling you about where we are exactly in this cycle?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tim. I think, well, and don't forget, we're going to hear from Anthropic here pretty soon. So I think that one of the blow off tops of any bull market is when the IPO activity gets nuts. In this particular case, I think there is still plenty of room for IPO activity, but we are paying attention. The aura was interesting. I don't know if I count that as super important, but nonetheless it's another IPO. This on the heels of last year when we were kind of stalled out. So I think it's interesting for some of the investment banking names like Goldman, Morgan, and JP Morgan, and Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan. But also we're paying attention because we think that that's something we should monitor as investors. But I will say one more thing very quickly. I think the SpaceX deal does something very important, which is validates the space trade. And we heard from Jeff Bezos this week where he talked about the total addressable market. SpaceX is claiming a $29 trillion TAM. So stay tuned. I think there's still a lot of room to run in many of these names.
The $29 trillion TAM getting a lot of attention today, Nancy.
Yeah.
Do you view that as realistic?
Well,
you're laughing.
I don't think most of what Elon says is realistic. You kind of have to look at the trend. You have to discount the timeline and maybe pare back some of the volume. But I do think we launched a thematic portfolio, Tim, about 9 months ago, and space is one of the themes, and we're pretty pleased with that as a contributor to total return, simply because it's not just SpaceX, but this does validate. It's Rocket Labs that came in much better than expected, 200 million in revenues, Planet Labs, and a number of other names that we own in that space. So I'm excited about the space option and the robotics, but yeah, I think it's grain of salt time.
Okay, I want to go back to space, but first, Nancy, you mentioned how you're kind of just watching very carefully how all of these private companies all seem to be filing and planning IPOs at the same time. Is there any reason to suspect that companies are trying to get ahead of a potential AI bubble bursting and coming to the market right now before it's too late?
Yeah, Emily, and or get ahead of a competitor. So I think, that clearly OpenAI had this ready to go as soon as the trial was over. I'm more interested in what Anthropic comes forward with, because we've heard Sam Altman has some of the same problem that Elon does in terms of projections, and we've already seen them cut their spend materially. And the question for OpenAI is, are they going to be able to continue to raise money in the market? I think the company is fraught for a whole host of reasons. So it could be AI bubble, it could be competitor.
Right. And when you're thinking about space, I mean, you've been a tech investor for a long time. A company like SpaceX, and we can also talk about OpenAI as well, but a company like SpaceX, they're always doing these very volatile projects, rocket launches. How do you see investors in the public market pricing that, like pricing a rocket failure? Is it going to be a very volatile stock?
I think it could be, Emily. I mean, I also think that what you're buying in this particular name, I mean, you've got Starlink, you've got XAI, but what you're really buying is Elon's vision. And so, the company has continued to appreciate in value, depending on whose numbers you're using, in spite of rocket launch failures. And let's not forget, they've been able to launch hundreds of rockets, and quite effectively. So yeah, that'll be an issue. It'd just be like a major recall on an auto company, but I don't think it derails the story. And I think what Bezos said was super important, simply because he's a competitor. And what he's saying is, it's better to have two in a very important industry like this. So I think we're going to see great things coming out of both, Blue Horizons, Origins, and SpaceX.
Yeah, I guess the question is about the next, a lot of people would say that SpaceX is much further along with certain parts of their capabilities than Bezos's Blue Origin is. I want to go back to what you said about Anthropic, because you do keep going back to Anthropic as being sort of the next company that we will hear from that's much anticipated when it comes to an IPO. Is it at a big disadvantage if it files and goes public after OpenAI?
I kind of think so, Tim. I think it's a matter of bandwidth for investors. And what will happen with the first mover advantage is they'll set the tone for the market, they'll set the tone for valuation, and then you have to come in. Now, in this case, I think Anthropic has most of the cards, so maybe timing is less important, but I would rather be the first to market than the second in this environment.
Tell us about those cards that Anthropic has before we let you go. What really stands out as a growth driver for them specifically?
Enterprise adoption, Emily. I think they're taking share from OpenAI. I don't hear anyone in my space talk about OpenAI. And unfortunately, Grok is losing share, and it's all going towards Claude and Gemini, but predominantly Claude and Codex. So I think they are the momentum player right now, just as we saw Google with Gemini just a few months back as kind of the momentum player. So it can shift, but they have really captured the attention of serious users of AI.
Just 30 seconds. When these companies do go public, how are you going to allocate capital from the portfolios that you manage to them?
We were just talking about that just right before I came on. We'll trim back some of the winners like Planet Labs and Rocket Labs in our portfolio. So yeah, we'll use available holdings, but we aren't going to exit anything.